Hey guys, this is Austin. Fortnite is one of the most popular games in the world right now, and one of the things that makes it special is that it will run on almost anything. So unlike some of our previous videos where we restricted ourselves to a mere single laptop, today we're going to be playing Fortnite on every single platform that it supports. So you might remember this, the $200 HP stream from our first Fortnite video. This is not exactly the greatest experience in the world, but it is about as low end of a PC as you could possibly play Fortnite on. With a cool 360p resolution and all settings set to low, our avatar dude is looking a little bit pixelated, but importantly, we are going to be recording over HDMI so we don't interfere with any of the performance of this laptop. Oh boy, all right, we're in the game, and that is a smooth 8 frames per second. Wow, this is really bad. Look at the textures. The filtering is really on point. I mean, that's a big blob. That's a mildly house-shaped blob. A bunch of tree blobs. We've got a cliff blob. Oh, we've got some really nice looking tree blobs up here. Wow, that's actually, oh wow, wait, what? What? Okay, that's a really unique looking tree blob. You know what? Let's just move on to something that's a little bit better than a $200 basic Windows computer. Now this might sound like a bad idea, but Fortnite will also run on the Mac. So here I have a maxed out 2016 15-inch MacBook Pro. Now it does have dedicated graphics, so you shouldn't expect anything too crazy. It will run the game. Oh, that's not good. The game just crashed on the Mac. Okay. Yep, okay, that's not working. So the Mac port of Fortnite is not exactly great, as you can see by my face right now. If that's too low end for you, well, you can step all the way up to the iPhone SE, which amazingly enough is actually still supported by Fortnite, even though it's hardware from the iPhone 6s. One of the first things you'll notice is that while the UI is fine on something like a laptop or even something like a PS4, when you shrink it down to a 4-inch display, it is very hard to see. As you can imagine, Fortnite running on the iPhone SE is running on its lowest settings. However, it actually is not going to be unplayable. So one of the things you do have to keep in mind is that while the screen itself is going to be sub 720p, it's not going to be the sharpest sort of presentation in the world. But I've got to say, on such a small display, it actually doesn't look bad. A lot better than most other mobile games. Frame rate wise, it's not going to be the smoothest thing in the world, but we do look like we're keeping a relatively close lock to 30 frames. I don't have an easy way of actually counting the frame rate on the mobile side, but I mean, not bad. Even though the SE is a couple years old, it still does have a reasonably decent hardware. So when Fortnite comes out on Android in the next few months, I'm really curious to see what kind of hardware that's going to support. But as far as I can say for the SE, this is totally playable. A little bit on the lower side, but yeah, not bad. Step up to the iPhone 10 and you're going to be getting a surprising jump in quality. So if I actually jump into the menu here, just like on the PC, we have a bunch of different quality settings, and the iPhone 10 will default to Epic. Now the iPhone 10 does have that wider aspect ratio, and while it looks a little bit weird when we're recording, when you're actually playing it on the phone, it does fully take up the screen. It does give you a bit of a wider field of view. The difference in quality settings is also pretty apparent. Now this is not going to be running at the full resolution. It looks like it's something a little bit closer to maybe 900p or even 1080p if I had to take a guess. But the quality settings, I mean, you can see the texture filtering, the view distance, everything looks to be a lot smoother, although frame rate still seems to be pretty close to 30 frames per second. Now, of course, an issue with both iPhone versions is that you do have to use the touch controls. Now, personally, I definitely prefer something like the Switch where we can actually use the physical controls, but hopefully, especially with the Android version coming soon, there will be some controller support added. For now, though, this actually isn't going to be too bad as far as a first-person or third-person shooter goes. The right side is what you use to scroll around, the left side is what you use to walk, and it's easy enough to just tap on things to select them. But controllers are always better. Now sure, this is not going to look as good as some of the other devices that we'll be trying here in the video, but for a lot of the game, I mean, look at this. We've got like nice reflections on the water, we've got decent draw distance, the lighting really doesn't seem to be hugely impacted. I'm not seeing any like God rays or anything here, but it's not going to be that far off from something like a console. Or at least in theory. Next up, we've got the PS4. You know, as long as you haven't tried to log in on your Switch or anything. So this is going to be supported, of course, on the PS4 Pro as well, but for this video, actually I want to take a look at how it's going to perform on the standard original launch PS4. One of the biggest changes with the PS4 edition over what we've done so far is that we actually get a smooth 60 frames per second. Now, it's not going to be a complete lock, but this is so much smoother, and especially when it comes to the responsiveness, is going to be a lot more competitive than any of the other systems that we've taken a look at so far. So the PS4 does target 1080p, although typically speaking, when you're running at 60 frames per second, it's running at a slightly lower resolution. But we do get the upgraded detail, and most importantly, we get that smooth frame rate. can't tell you how much better. Just did so much better. I actually don't know this off the top of my head, but I would guess that the PS4 is probably the most common way that people are playing Fortnite. So if you want, of course, you can run it on a PS4 Pro, and we're gonna take a look at some of the higher end console stuff in a minute. But the important thing to know is that even on a completely stock base PS4 that came out, in 2013, we are getting a nice smooth frame rate, and we're going to be getting those. What? For the ultimate console experience, you're going to want to pick up an Xbox One X. Not only does this have a lot more power with a full 6 teraflop GPU, but that power is going to enable us to play at basically a locked 4K 60 frames per second. Maybe not quite locked, but it's going to be a big jump over the PS4 as well as especially the base Xbox One. This is the way to play Fortnite. So not only are we going to be getting that nice smooth frame rate, but we're also going to be getting the 4K resolution as well as the upgraded settings. So stuff like draw distance, texture filtering, we're going to be getting some slightly higher res textures. Yeah, this looks pretty nice. And on top of that, we're of course still playing on console. So it's not quite the maximum experience that we can have with Fortnite just yet. Next up, we have the newest version of Fortnite, the Switch Edition. So as a console that, as you would expect, is going to be a little bit more powerful than the iPhone SE, we are going to be getting the full experience here, save for the, save the world mode. But does anyone actually play that? So one of the biggest issues with the Switch port actually is Sony's fault. So if you've ever logged into your Epic account on a PS4, you're actually locked out of logging in on the Switch, which caused a lot of people a lot of hassle. Although thankfully, I never played on PS4 with my main account, so we're good. Ah, yes, the joy of physical controls. Don't get me wrong, the iPhone version is fine, and for touchscreen controls, it's really not that bad, but playing with Joy-Cons really does feel a lot better. And it actually is not really going to be a huge difference regardless of whether you're going to be playing in docked mode like we are here, or in portable mode on the Switch. You're still going to be getting the same controls, just a little bit of a graphical difference and, well, a much, much bigger screen. So the Switch does operate with a dynamic resolution up to 900p, as I got shot in the back. So if it had a higher resolution, I totally would not have died there, because I need the extra pixels to see people behind me. One of the downsides of playing on the Switch is that unlike on the Xbox One and PS4, we are going to be limited to 30 frames per second. Now don't get me wrong, it actually does a reasonably decent job of holding to that, but when you're playing against other people on consoles who are running at double the frame rate, you're just not going to have as responsive of gameplay, and it's not going to quite hold up. Last but certainly not least, we have a high-end PC. So this is actually not a dedicated gaming PC, this is what we built to do streaming on, but we've still got some solid hardware inside, including the 2nd gen Ryzen 7 2700X running at about 4 GHz, as well as 16 gigs of RAM and a GTX 1070? To show you just how far you can push Fortnite, we're not even actually running it on maxed out settings here. So we've got it set to 1800p and on high settings. So in theory, if we had something like a Titan, we could push it even farther. But importantly, we're getting a near 4K res, and we're still able to stay above 60 frames per second for the most part. Once you get to something like the Xbox One X, going up to PC actually doesn't make a huge difference. Really where you're seeing the major advantages are in stuff like high frame rate support if you want to play on a higher refresh rate monitor, and of course you get full mouse and keyboard support. But the visual quality, I mean, look at this. This is just obscenely nice looking. It doesn't hurt. The Fortnite is a very colorful, very nice looking, vibrant game. Yeah, it's nice and smooth. So with a full 8-core Ryzen CPU, which honestly is slight overkill for this game, but the GTX 1070 does make a huge difference. Of course, if you want to go higher, you can go higher, but as far as a near 4K experience goes, I'm not really going to complain here. Alright, I will say it's not too bad playing Fortnite on touchscreen, and it's a lot better on an actual controller. When you get a mouse and keyboard, especially with a nice smooth setup that you're able to get at least 60 frames per second on, Fortnite feels so much better. It's crazy at how this video started and where we are now.